What's up, everybody? Thank you for tuning in. Casey Hendrickson here in the Silver Fox Art Studios, silverfoxart.com. All right, it's been a hectic week. So we had St. Paddy's Day. I had my taxes. I had a meeting that I had to attend to. So you didn't get a lot of early live streams this week, and I apologize about that. Feels like every week I'm apologizing to you, but I'm trying to keep a more regimental schedule as we move forward. And hopefully next week will allow that to happen. Occasionally my sales guys come up to me and say that we need to do a meeting or something like that before lunch. And so sometimes that happens. It's just one of the, and I don't have any affiliates, so I'm not as disciplined with it as I should be, to say the least. All right, so let's start off. We're going to talk about Elon Musk today and Kanye. And I know that a lot of people don't think the Kanye story is important, but I think it might be. We'll get to that in just a little bit. Let's start off with Elon. Elon Musk has been asked by Twitter users to deactivate all Teslas in Russia. Here we go again. So this is the cancel culture globalist nonsense. And look, here's the thing. I'm watching a ton of conservatives fall into this trap. I'm watching moderates fall into this trap. Cancel culture is a cancer, period. Doesn't matter what it is, okay? Censorship is bad, period. It doesn't matter what it is. Now, I know that, you have a bunch of people out there, oh, Russia's bad, Putin's bad, the invasion's bad. Yeah, okay, that's fine. But, again, look, you fall back on history, and I know that I've said this on the radio show a ton, and I'm going to say it again. I'm going to keep saying it over and over and over again until it actually gets drilled into people's heads. In human history, the pro-censorship side has never been the good guy. I don't know what else to say. Now, on this occasion, people are justifying it because Russia does censorship. They do. But their media has also told the truth, where the Ukrainian media and the Western media were not. That's not always been the case, but sometimes. And we know that our media lies a lot. So, more information, the better, whether it's misinformation or disinformation or the truth, that's up to you to decide. That's the whole thing. I did ask something on social media earlier this week. Yesterday, I think it was early yesterday, maybe the day before. And I said, look, not justifying Russia's actions at all. I think most people who listen to this show regularly understand where I stand on this issue. But has anybody even taken the time to look at the war crimes committed by Ukrainian forces since 2014? That's all I asked. Just real simple, right? Just a very simple question. I get it. Putin bad, Russia bad, invasion bad, Ukrainian people are suffering. I get that. They're not the only people suffering. There are other people suffering. There are other people who have been murdered. There are other people who have used airplanes and artillery and missiles and rockets and guns to kill innocent civilians in Donbass. It's a fact. It's not up for debate. It's not in dispute. So I'm not justifying anything that Russia is doing. But, especially around the city of Mariupol. Now, that has a very bloody history. It has a very bloody history of Ukrainian abuse of civilians. And that could be why we're seeing some of the things in that city that we're not seeing in other parts of Ukraine. Okay? So, again, not justifying it, but there's also not just Russian and Ukrainian forces in that city. There's DPR forces, and the Donetsk People's Republic forces were basically established because of those human rights violations by Ukrainian forces under the previous president, mostly, although they have been accused of continuing some of those things under Zelensky. To what extent, I don't know. But Poroshenko didn't care about human life at all in the Donbass region. Poroshenko was an awful, awful person, and he's the former president, in case you don't know. Current president is Zelensky, which everybody knows now. But and Zelensky is supposed to be a step in the right direction. A guy who wanted to peacefully resolve things with Russia, but part of that is he wants Crimea back. Russia doesn't want to give Crimea back. Russia's never given Crimea back. So it's a very, very complicated history. But I just asked a very simple question. And the reason that I did this is Western media is not covering any of this at all. They're not covering the Eastern Front, in an unbiased fashion. I don't think that they're being fully informed on what is happening at these checkpoint assaults on news media. I've talked about that before. So I just asked a very simple question. While everybody's sitting here doing the war drum thing and the outrage thing, oh, hey, they're hitting residential apartment buildings. Okay. Most of those apartment buildings are evacuated. They are being used by Ukrainian troops to fire on tanks and stuff. Why do we know that? Because Ukrainian troops have released the video of them doing that. So we know that they're doing that. Now, to what extent and what buildings and everything else, like I said, we can get into that debate all we want. But there's very few reporters that are on the ground in the eastern portion of the country. They're independent journalists, and they don't have the reach that your main national platforms do. And you should probably start paying attention to some of that stuff, because there is a lot of things that the Ukrainians have been accused of that have been happening in that area that are true. Is it a justification for the war? No, not in my opinion. Certainly, Vladimir Putin has exaggerated some of that, but it is important that you understand, as there's this moral outrage in the West that civilian areas are being attacked in Mariupol and some other cities. You should also know that the Ukrainians have a long and bloody history of doing that in that city to civilians long before the invasion happened. And then nothing else, you have perspective, right? Nobody's trying to justify the Russian invasion. Nobody's trying to justify the behavior of some Russian troops, not all, or Vladimir Putin or anything else. But you need to understand what's actually happening over there. And when we get into this cancel culture stuff, not allowing Russia to engage in commerce at all with the West and things like that, and the sanctions, but also the other stuff. It's like asking Xbox and PlayStation to not allow Russian players, to have FIFA take any Russian players or the Russian team out of their soccer games, and just things like that. That's the stuff going too far. You're punishing the Russian people for something that they, right now, doesn't even look like they support. And it becomes a real issue. So now you've got people hopping onto Twitter, and they're asking Elon Musk to deactivate all Teslas. Now imagine you're Russian, you're, a capitalist maybe, and you go out there, you buy a Tesla. I don't know how many Teslas are in Russia. I got no clue. And all of a sudden you're just, driving down the street, and boom, Tesla just turns it all off. Now, Tesla's done a lot to help Ukraine. They turned on the internet over there with their Skynet and all of that stuff. So there's a lot of things that are, happening with Elon Musk specifically to help the Ukrainian people out, and that's commendable. But at the same time, now you got the cancel culture mob this cancel culture got normalized. That's the thing. It got normalized in the West, especially in our country, where, hey, you just harass people until they do what you want. It's a form of bullying. We're going to bully companies until they fire people that we want. We're going to bully companies until they pull a product that we want. We're going to bully companies, until they stop selling or operating in a specific area. There's been tons of cancel culture on all of this. Now, some of the stuff that we're seeing, like McDonald's and Coke and all of that stuff leaving Russia, a lot of that may have to do with the Russian economy more than anything. But at the same time, with Elon Musk and getting this has triggered a lot of people to make an observation here. Like, hold on a second. Tesla can actually do this, which is why people on social media are asking Tesla to do this. Now, regular listeners of my radio show, you're going to be hearing a bit of a callback to something that I talked about a couple of months ago, which I'll refresh you on here in a minute. But new people who might be watching the stream for the very first time or have never heard my radio show or anything else, you're probably looking at this and going, wait a minute, what are you getting at here? Look, there is a distinct move towards technology. It's not just globalism in being able to shop where you want, to buy certain products where you want. I mean, we can't even send packages to Russia now because, UPS is not operating there. FedEx is not operating there. You got to go through a different service like DHL or something like that. So they can't even get things that they may need to survive because we're choosing not to let that happen. That's punishing the Russian people, not the Russian government. That's a little immoral if you ask me. But we start getting into this form of cancel culture, and a lot of it's virtue signaling. I get it, but the goal here is to essentially erase Russia from the world. all Russian people, all Russian products, Russia itself as a nation, gone. They don't exist. We just pretend that they don't actually exist at all. We won't give them food. We won't give them energy. We won't give them recreation. We won't give them anything. We're just going to erase them and pretend that they do not exist. They are essentially ghosted, right? So, a lot of people have seen this, and Tesla has not responded to this, okay? They've not responded, and I certainly hope that they don't. But they do have the ability. They have the ability to remotely turn off these vehicles. Most electric vehicles have this ability in them. There's updates and things like that that have to come from the manufacturer. Ford and GM and everything else, they all update your electric vehicles, from a central hub, which, by the way, has led to some cyber attacks, some hackers being able to take control of some of these vehicles and that sort of thing. It's rare, but it can happen. And there have been errors with any update or patch that goes through. Your vehicle doesn't work very good for a couple of days, or maybe doesn't work at all. There was a situation with Ford a little while ago. They fixed it really fast, but where you couldn't even get into your car, and so some people couldn't even drive their vehicle until that was fixed. So there's some issues that come along with electric vehicles, obviously, besides the power consumption issue, which the greenies out there and the Biden administration and the Pete Buttigieg of the world don't want to acknowledge. But this is a very real thing that electric vehicles can do, because there's a central hub that updates the car. There's the ability to shut the car off. Now, this is packaged as an anti-theft promotion and device and that sort of thing. And I think that they're expecting, the remote access of vehicle market to hit like $800 million this year or next year. It's a big market that's emerging. And if you have a company like Tesla who has the ability to shut off your car, and OnStar can kind of do this as well, and there's other services that have this ability. We've always warned you about OnStar and the ability of the federal government to spy on you and that sort of thing. And then we were told that was a conspiracy theory, and then what did we find out? We found out the FBI was spying on people on OnStar. They were turning on their OnStar speakers, and they were listening into people's cars without a warrant. And it was the Bush administration that kind of stopped that. So allegedly stopped that. Who knows how that's actually working out. But you were told that it was a conspiracy theory. And General Motors said, we would never let anybody do that. We control OnStar, that sort of thing. Well, Bank of America and other financial institutions have also been telling you that they're not going to hand over your personal information unless law enforcement has a warrant. What do we find out after January 6th? Bank of America handed over all of the financial transactions and travel data and everything else of anybody who was in Washington, D.C., anywhere around January 6th of 2021 or 2020. So they just turned it over. There's no warrant. They were asked. They turned it all over. So they didn't protect their own clients' monetary data. So this becomes some serious stuff here. Now, this has also led to a lot of people hopping onto TikTok and other social media and going, this is why they want you to have electric cars, because it can remotely shut down your car. Yeah, that's part of it. There's a bigger agenda there, but it's not a giant, we want to shut down your car, that's why we need to push electric vehicles thing. Because as I pointed out, there's already technology out there that can remotely shut down your car. Like I said, it's packaged as an anti-theft sort of a thing. You call in, you report that somebody stole your car, boom, they shut it down. The car comes to a smooth stop. And at the same time, some people, Tesla owners in particular, they have the ability to use an app themselves and do it. So they can actually, somebody takes their car, boom, they can do it. So as a parental control device, it's good. As an anti-theft device, it's good. But is the ability of that to be abused very real? Absolutely. So here's the story. Business Insider again. A small but impassioned group of Twitter users are urging Elon Musk to deactivate all Teslas in Russia. And again, this is all because we need to erase Russia off of the planet. We don't actually want to erase them off the planet. We just want to pretend that we did until they start complying. Please turn off and deactivate all Teslas in Russia. It's absolutely disgusting what Russia is doing, and Putin has to be stopped. I don't know that Putin has a Tesla. What if you don't stop Putin? What if you stop all of the anti-war activists who are being arrested in Russia? They've arrested like 15,000 people. I mean, some of the protesters, they're showing up and protesting, and they don't have signs, just blank signs, and they're still being arrested. Of course, they're trying to get around the legal code there which, basically saying, I'm not protesting anything. I'm just standing here with a sign. What are you talking about? The sign doesn't say anything. It's just, it's just a blank piece of cardboard. And they're being arrested anyway. Another requested the deactivation as a sort of a tech embargo on Russia. Okay, this should scare you. Because what's the mob doing? The mob is saying, we don't like these people. Those people haven't done anything wrong. Just so we're crystal clear, Putin may have, the Russian government may have, but the people driving Teslas around Russia haven't done anything wrong. But the mob doesn't care that they haven't done anything wrong. They're guilty by association and xenophobia and all of that other stuff. Russophobia is what they're calling it now. So shut down all of the Teslas in Russia because, screw Russians. Vladimir Putin's a bad guy, but all Russians suck anyway, so just shut down their cars. The mob is coming for people that they don't like. So what happens in the future when the mob comes for other people they don't like? Get it? This is what I was telling you. You got to be very careful about this strategy that's being used. Globalism will turn the mob on anybody that doesn't conform, anybody who doesn't comply, anybody who doesn't fall in line. And what don't they fall in line with? Whatever the hell the mob is outraged about at that point in time. And the mob has been outraged about a lot of stuff. And they've been wrong the vast majority of the time. The mob has been outraged about police shootings of young black men. Turns out it doesn't happen all that much. And turns out that the innocent number of people shot by police almost never happens. Right? All of these protests, all these burning down of towns and cities and everything else, those suspects were almost all guilty. The innocent suspects rarely get talked about. So it's interesting. The mob tends to be outraged about crap that isn't real. They're easily misled. They're easily manipulated. They're easily led into a visceral, instantaneous action. And that's why I'm concerned about this. But I also want to point out, this has nothing to do with electric vehicles. Yes, Tesla has this ability now. GM, Ford, they all have that ability too with certain models of their car. But this is the thing. I talked about this in January. Look at the date of the article. Okay, this is from my show prep, January 8th. So there is a new law that would allow police to have a kill switch in every single vehicle. Think about that. We talked about it on the show. It's not just electric vehicles. Every vehicle has an electrical system. That electrical system is necessary for the vehicle to operate, okay? Now, you get into classic cars, maybe you get away from that a little bit, but anything even remotely newer is going to have a massive reliance upon an electrical system. All cars do, but we're obviously talking about the ECUs and the brains of the vehicle. So this is a real problem. Now, some people are like, well, hey, you got these massive police chases. Certainly law enforcement is going to love this, right? You have these dangerous high-speed police chases. You got drunk drivers. You shut down the vehicle. You don't have to worry about it now. You don't have to worry about the pedestrians and innocent civilians that might get caught up in that police chase. That's a great point. From a law enforcement perspective, they absolutely want something like this. Now, there are mobile devices that can be carried in police cruisers, which will accomplish the same thing. A little bit harder to deploy. A little bit trickier, maybe even a little bit more dangerous, right? But this is a very real thing. Now, the government is trying to ban gas vehicles by like 2030 something. They're not going to get that done, but government oversight is one of the major chasms that separate Republicans and Democrats, at least historically. But the issue of government control has been a popular one lately with COVID-19 protocols and mask mandates. Again, more stuff that the mob was canceling people for where the mob was wrong. The mob was wrong about vaccines. The mob was wrong about masks. The mob was wrong about the dangers presented to the public by COVID. The mob was wrong about it all. But people are being canceled because the mob was just loud and outrageous and the media was on their side. New law from Washington may require all new cars to have to install kill switches that law enforcement can control at their discretion. And might mitigate drunk driving, police chases, etc. Now, again, this is not something that requires a warrant. This would be something that police would have the ability to do. You plug in the license plate, I assume, and boom, you'd be able to, instantly identify the device in that car and kill it, and it would come to a stop. Like I said, from a police law enforcement perspective, I can 100% see why law enforcement would see this as a valuable tool. Absolutely. My issue is, what happens if, I don't know, there's a pandemic and the government doesn't want people to drive, so they just kill everybody's car? Anybody think that is not a plausible scenario now? 3 years ago, I think that most people would have looked at me and said, "You're insane. That's crazy talk." Cool, but they actually tried to do it. So what if they just did it now? They just send a mass EAS alert to everybody and say, "Hey, you can't drive today. Pandemic and stuff, or national emergency." Maybe there's a parade or something like that, so they kill every car around that area. Just for, runners' safety or something of that nature. But here's the other thing. You start to look at these scenarios where you just go out there and it's just like, hey, maybe we got a pandemic or what have you, and or there's some kind of an emergency situation where we can kill all of the cars, which may affect you. At the same time, we have had calls from members of our government, okay, not just dweebuses on Twitter. Members of our government have said we need to have these regular pauses in travel in the United States. Now, this started coming up shortly after the lockdowns happened, and they started telling everybody that, look, we need to have these regular pauses in transportation. We need to have these lockdowns on a semi-regular basis, and they were calling for like a week, a month. Some of these people were. And they were saying that they needed to do that. Why? To heal the planet. The planet needed that week to heal, which is nonsense, but that's what they were claiming. Now, if you get crazy people like Biden, the vegetable in chief, and Pete Buttigieg, our former mayor, you get them in Washington, D.C., and they're pushing a radical climate agenda. What's to stop them from doing that? It's possible. And again, the issue is not, would the people in power now do it? The issue is, would the people in power in the future utilize a tool to do that if that tool is in place? And I always like to remind everybody, when leftists were running around and saying that Trump was actually a neo-Nazi and Hitler incarnate, which they say about every Republican because, again, the left is crazy people. But they go out there, and there was actually a massive movement to buy firearms on the left. Now, the left hates guns, right? But there's a massive movement to buy firearms on the left because they were convinced that Donald Trump was a tyrant. And it was wonderful for us to point this out. Like, well, we kept telling you that if you get rid of guns, eventually you might have a tyrant in power. And even though we disagree with you about Trump being a tyrant because you're insane, at the same time, you think he's a tyrant and you're taking precautions to protect yourself just in case he might be. So even the left acknowledges the very real possibility that an evil person could take over the country and then oppress the entire country. They've just given us 4 years of that acknowledgement. They're going to pretend that that isn't a real thing now while they're in power. But the reality is that if you give government the tools to oppress you, at some point down the line, someone will oppress you. So you have to deny them the tools to oppress you, even if that means making things more uncomfortable, dangerous, or inconvenient for our society now. It's Benjamin Franklin quote, come to life, right? Those who desire safety over freedom deserve neither. That's where we're at. And this is one of those tools that could easily be abused. We've talked about law enforcement violating database laws and everything else, going to pro-gun rallies and other rallies and writing down the license plates, putting them in a little database. Hey, these are all the pro-gun people. These are all the Trump supporters. These are all these people. And then next thing you know, they've got a nice little database, right? We've caught law enforcement doing that in violation of their own laws. So this is concerning. But the fact is, I went back and I looked at, I don't have it in front of you here, but I went back and I looked at the Tesla forums here, okay? Tesla has their own forums on Reddit and elsewhere. And I looked back 2 years ago. And 2 years ago, there were some people on there who are concerned about the ability of Tesla to remotely shut down their car. And if you look at the comments are There's no incentive for them to do that. It doesn't make any sense why they would do that. The power company can shut off your power too. Of course, it's a straw man fallacy. We're not talking about that. The issue isn't shutting down service because of non-payment. The issue is shutting down service just because they want to or because the government asked them to. Right? That's the issue. And if we're talking about something that is a privilege and not a right, which is driving an electric vehicle, and the government comes along and says, hey, you know what? We know that a bad guy was seen in a Tesla in this particular area. Why don't you just shut down every Tesla in the city? And we're just going to go find him right now. That's a real possibility. And some people might look at that and go, well, that's a great tool for law enforcement. Yeah, maybe. But what happens if you have an emergency and you happen to be caught up in that dragnet? And now you can't get to your services, and you can't save somebody's life or something of that nature, or just if you get fired. I mean, how many times is the boss going to take the example of, hey, the police shut down my Tesla today. Sorry, I can't get it to work. And we're going to get to a point where these are going to be potential thoughts. And even if you don't think it's a big deal, even if you don't think somebody's going to be fired for it, if it becomes the norm and everybody's aware of it, what a massive inconvenience to people who have done nothing wrong to basically be shut down just because, the government asks. And if you look at the smartphone situations that we have had with law enforcement and the FBI in the past with Apple and Android, you will see that I'm right about this, because that has been a major, major battle between federal law enforcement agencies, local law enforcement agencies, and Apple and Google when it comes to their mobile devices. It's been a huge issue. Open the phone for us. Well, we'll open this specific device for you, but you've got to turn the device over for us, and we'll do it in our lab. Apple used to tell the FBI this all the time. They did about the San Bernardino terrorist. And the FBI said no. The FBI denied Apple unlocking that phone. The FBI said, we want a master key to unlock the phone ourselves, so then we don't have to come to you next time to unlock the next Apple phone, the iPhone, that we come in contact with. And Apple said, no, we're not going to give you a master key. The master key will get out, and then our devices won't be secure anymore. And then what did the FBI do? And what did conservatives do? And what did liberals do? They all went public, and they said, wow, Apple is not allowing the FBI to investigate a terrorist attack, which is a lie. It was 100% a lie. But that's what they said. Now, they asked politely, and the company said that they would do it. What happens if that situation happens with electric vehicles? And then it extends out, becomes a much bigger issue than just a smartphone, right? An electric vehicle, you could make the argument, is a much bigger deal than a smartphone. So you're starting to see a lot of signs of this. And you could say it's Minority Report. You could say it's Demolition Man. Both of those movies have been far more prophetic, I think, than a lot of people wanted to believe. But this is a very real issue. But it doesn't just affect electric cars. It affects every single car. If this thing becomes law, it affects every car. So we talked about it in January, because I know that there's going to be a lot of people in law enforcement who look at this and go, yeah, this would be great. And high-speed chase saves a lot of lives. You're right, probably could. What else could it be used for? And that's where Ben Franklin's quote is so, so important. All right, I want to talk about Kanye West. I know that a lot of people, especially in the conservative space, refuse to accept that there is a culture war, that they're losing. A lot of people obviously don't want to talk about Kanye. Whatever, Kanye's just a celebrity. Who cares, okay? It's the whole Kanye drama thing. I get that, but I'm not convinced he's entirely the bad guy. I'm not convinced that Pete Davidson's the bad guy either, but I'm not convinced that Kanye West is necessarily all wrong. And I'll explain why coming up in just a minute. In the meantime, I got to pay some bills. Here's a commercial from silverfoxart.com. Hey, while we're thinking about it, I know that a lot of you are engaging in the Rumble rants and the live chat feature. If you're on Rumble, would you do me a favor in the comment section below this, once the video is done, or right now, whenever is most convenient for you, would you just type something in there? I don't really care what it is. I'll give you like a word of the day at some point starting next week maybe, but just type something in there so the comment system picks up on it, and that hopefully elevates us up a little bit in the search rankings and that sort of thing and helps the algorithm. I'm waiting to hear back from Rumble. I've sent a message to them trying to ask them, like, what are the things that help with the algorithm and discovery, because during the radio show, we have a lot more people watching on Rumble. That doesn't include any of the other platforms, but on Rumble, then a lot of the stuff that gets featured on the front page, and I don't know why I can't get featured on the front page. So I'm trying to figure that out. It was something that really stuck in my craw when I was paying for the much more expensive streaming package that they had, because we were one of the pilot channels on Rumble streaming. So I'm trying to figure out what it is that can get me up there and get featured and that sort of thing, and hopefully help with the algorithm. So if you could all do that, if you're watching on Rumble right now, in the comment section below the video, not the Rumble rants live chat section, but the comment section, if you could type something in there, that would be great. Hit that Rumble button as well. That should help the algorithm also. So Kanye West, this is a very interesting article by Emily Jashinsky. Excuse me. Wow, that's a hard word for me to say. I didn't think. In my head, I say it just fine. Getting it out of my mouth, not so easy. So very interesting article about this a couple of days ago. And I was going to talk about it on the radio show, and I ran out of time because we had some other thing that came up and went longer than I was expecting. So I didn't talk about it on the radio show, even though I teased it, so I'm sorry about that. But Kanye West isn't just clashing with Pete Davidson. He's clashing with secular culture. Now, that piqued my interest because I think, like most people, I was kind of aware that something was happening. And, you know, obviously with the divorce and, okay, whatever, you hear little rumors about it. I do not give a damn about Kim Kardashian. I don't really care about Kanye West either. But I think that when you're talking about the culture war, Kanye's very influential with young America. And so is, unfortunately, Kim Kardashian. But Kanye, if you ask me, much more important in that realm. And you start looking at some of the stuff that's been going on. And I want to preface this before we get into this, just so nobody takes me out of context, even though they will anyway. I am not approving of the way that Kanye is going about this, okay? Kanye does have a history of some mental disorders, and that's going to factor into his behavior. I don't know what his medication situation is looking like or anything like that. I'm not trying to denigrate Kanye, but we do know that he does have some psychological disorders that he has to handle. And occasionally there are manic and depressive episodes, okay? I have relatives who have this. I understand it quite well. A lot of other people do not. They just understand it as, oh, Kanye's being a lunatic or what have you. That's not what's happening. So when big life events happen to Kanye West, he doesn't have the ability to adjust to it like most people do. Now, with that said, he's also dealing with some really stressful stuff right here with his kids, and that would set off a lot of people. We all know that people go crazy during divorce and breakups. And again, I think that he could handle this better. I actually think that Pete Davidson has handled some of it very well. But nonetheless, the stuff that has Kanye upset, I'm kind of with him on. At least most of it. So let's take a look. All right, while the world furiously litigates the parenting disputes of Kanye West and Kim Kardashian, we might as well consider the limits of secular media's coverage. Determining who's ultimately at fault for making these private conflicts public is an impossible game of chicken or egg. This is, after all, a relationship between an artist and a reality star, one that's been commoditized since its inception. Their business has always been public, both separately and together. Now kids are involved. And Emily is right, okay? So they're public figures, and unfortunately, anything that happens with public figures like this ends up turning into a big deal, all right? It's not something that we should be proud of as a culture, but that's what we do. As the pair tries to disentangle from their marriage and co-parent amicably, West has documented his side of the story on social media. It is uncomfortably personal, tragic for the kids, and clear that the rapper is in a bad place. And again, he has dealt with psychological issues. He's been diagnosed with some. And this is going to be one of those things that he is going to have an extra difficult time working through beyond what most of you who don't have these issues. And medication is not going to be a big help, okay? So just take it from somebody who knows. This is not something that you should just automatically hate the guy over or attack him over. This is something that he's going to have to deal with. But Kanye's always lived his life publicly. You know, this is a guy who's always had everything kind of out there, he wears his emotions on his sleeve, and oftentimes he steps in it as a result of that. Alongside custody disputes, a central struggle seems to be West's concerns over leftist and secular influences introduced to his children when they're with their mother. Now, that sentence right there, there's a lot of parents, particularly fathers, who have been in the exact same boat and have had the exact same complaints and have been ignored completely by our society and the court system. One of the things that Kanye has done, whether you like him or not, whether you think he's relevant or not, pre and post-Trump, Kanye has gotten people to talk about crap that nobody was talking about. He has been masterful at that. This could be a really good thing for men's rights. Really good thing. We'll see. Again, I'm not approving of the way that he's handling all of this, but you also have to factor in that he does have diagnosed psychological disorders that are going to make it more difficult for him to navigate this like most people would want. Something that Pete Davidson is also not acknowledging. West posted and then deleted an Instagram video on Sunday writing, "I told y'all before about this TikTok stuff." Now, as I've said before, I'm on TikTok because that's where the culture war is. I don't think that if you're not going to engage in that, I don't think that you should be a part of it. TikTok is hot trash, okay? Hot trash. But there is good stuff there. It's just mixed in with all of the garbage and the filth. And if you don't want to put in the effort to find the good stuff, I understand that completely. I'm in a unique situation as a public figure. Most of you are not. If you enjoy TikTok and you're on TikTok, please follow me and spread my content to your followers. It's at Casey the Host, CASEY, at Casey the Host on TikTok. If you're not on TikTok and you're not really interested in it, don't get on the platform. Avoid it. It's not a place that I'm telling you to get on because you have to be there. It's amazing. I'm not telling you that. It's trash, okay? Your kids probably shouldn't be on it either, but they are. So he added this. He goes, "Now my 8-year-old on here singing she fell in love with an emo girl. Leftists don't want fathers to have no say in our children's lives." He's right. So this is why he's upset. When his daughters are with their mom, she's having them sing songs with very strong sexual themes. This daughter's 8 years old. Mine's 9. My youngest is 5. I would not want my 9-year-old singing this song. Wouldn't be appropriate. I can appreciate his perspective here. Why is his 8-year-old on TikTok without his permission singing a song with very strong sexual themes and wearing makeup and dressing the part? As a dad who is, Kanye's always sang about Jesus, but he's really leaned into his faith over the past couple of years. And so for him, he's watching his soon-to-be ex-wife pervert his child on TikTok, and he's powerless to stop it. This is a complaint that countless parents have about their ex-spouse. Posting content, exploiting the child, damaging the relationship between the child and the other parent, bringing new lovers in and out of the child's life, causing that damage, which is very emotionally damaging to children. And that is I'm sorry, I don't care who you are. Kanye has a point here. North, her mother, and her cousin posted a TikTok video lip-syncing to Emo Girl, a song produced by Nor's soon-to-be step-uncle Travis Barker. Now, I'm a big fan of Travis Barker. But this is not content that is great for an 8-year-old. Okay? If you're an adult and you like it, great, fantastic. But an 8-year-old? It's rife with wildly sexual lyrics, and the girls looked the part as well. They were sporting black makeup and what have you. I don't need to show it to you. It's been deleted anyway. Last month, West asked Instagram followers for some advice. Since this is my first divorce, I need to know what I should do about my daughter being put on TikTok against my will. Kanye sees TikTok for what it is. It is a field of depravity, and he doesn't want his children exposed to it. Now, there are ways for you to have your kids in TikTok where you can protect them, and they're not seeing stuff, okay? I get that. I'm not chastising anybody who puts their kids on TikTok or Instagram. Occasionally, mine will be on there too, but it's something that I control, I produce, and they do not have access to that app, period. I will show the video that we made together. They do not have TikTok on any of their devices. They cannot see this stuff unless I say so. He's concerned that his child, a celebrity child, is going to go down this route. Now, I feel the obligation to state the obvious. His soon-to-be ex-wife is famous for one reason and one reason alone, and we all know what that reason is. He's probably concerned that his 8-year-old is going to follow mom's path. And she's going to be hypersexualized at a young age, which is a fact. The school system is grooming our children. Leftist extremists are grooming our children. They are making the argument for these sex camps for 5- and 6-year-olds to teach them all sorts of graphic sexual content. We've got content in our elementary schools all over the country, including right here in Michiana on the Indiana side of the border, probably the Michigan side of the border too, where they have actual drawings of graphic sexual acts that are being done to adults. And they're showing young children this. Don't think for a second that Kanye doesn't see it too. And a lot of these parents who are fighting for their kids, Kanye's in that camp. Here's the difference. Kanye's Kanye. So while you can have the White House orchestrate a plot to falsely accuse parents who show up to school board meetings of being domestic terrorists, and that was a complete White House concocted nonsensical thing, which was completely debunked. But this is Kanye West. Like it or not, if you're in this fight about inappropriate material with your kids in school, Kanye's your ally. Guess what? He's got more power and more influence than you do. West posted a lot on a Sunday, claiming his kids weren't being allowed to attend worship service and praying on camera. Most of the content has since been deleted. Okay. Kanye's a man who's leaning into his faith. He wants his kids to lean into his faith too. They're not being allowed to go to worship according to him. I don't know if he's telling the truth. But this is always an issue when you have a divorce. And the two parents have a different religious philosophy. Kanye's going to church, wants his kids to go to church. Kim apparently doesn't really want them to. He's fighting for, in his mind, his child's souls. Now, these are the public messages that were posted, which got a lot of attention. I know that Kanye made a song about killing Pete Davidson and all of that stuff. You know, and again, I get it. Some people are like, "Hey, this is too far," and I get that. You know, I think it's okay to look at that and go, eh. But it is also okay to look at it and go, "Okay, this is art. This is how he's working through his emotions. Artists do work through their emotions through their art form. If Pete Davidson's not dead, then Kanye West hasn't done anything wrong. If Pete Davidson shows up dead, I think suspect number one is Kanye." Okay, I think most people are on board with that. So, you know, this is kind of how the text messages that got leaked out by Pete Davidson's friend, which I'm sure Pete Davidson told him to do. Yo, it's Skeet. Can you please take a second and calm down? It's 8 a.m. and it don't got to be like this. Kim is literally the best mother I've ever met. What she does for those kids is amazing, and you are bleeping lucky that she's your kid's mom. I've decided that I'm not going to let you treat us this way anymore, and I'm done being quiet. Grow the bleep up. So then Kanye says, oh, you're using profanity? Where are you right now? And that's where he says, I'm in bed with your wife, and he takes a picture of himself, shirtless, okay? So he's poking the bear at this point. Then they jab about hospital, rehab, and everything else. Both of them have, substance abuse issues. Now, again, I don't want to get into all of it. Again, I think that in the broader point of this text exchange, I think that Pete Davidson was okay. His perspective is, hey, you made a video about killing me. You're attacking us left and right publicly. I'm not going to take it anymore. It doesn't have to be this way. Let's stop. And Kanye ain't ready for that. And I think part of the reason that Kanye's not ready for it is that his kids are being swept up into this, and he feels like he doesn't have any control or any rights as a father, which pretty much every man who's ever gone through a divorce will be able to tell you. And I don't need to go through all of this, but there's points where Pete Davidson, frankly, says some really reasonable things, okay? But as we've highlighted with some of the issues of Kanye earlier, okay? Now, interestingly, West sounded pretty lucid in some of his Sunday posts, and that's obviously not always the case. Granted, there's no excuse for dragging your children's intimate personal business onto social media, whether you're famous or not, and it isn't exactly a sign of well-being to post that much serious content and then rapidly delete it. Agreed. I agree with her assessment here. But when you consider that West's young Christianity has given him a new lens through which to see fatherhood and the secular world, he makes way more sense. It all becomes a tragic case study in difficulties of living out your faith in a dark society with secular norms. Yeah. And I'm telling you right now, when you start looking at a lot of this, and I encourage you to read the rest of this, this is a guy who is, one, he's losing a say in his children because of a split, which is the reality for men in this country, period. And men are as valuable, if not more valuable, to their children than the mother. Now, our court system doesn't see it that way, but I think the prison system proves I'm right. Over 83% of prison inmates did not have a father in the home growing up. I think that says a lot. Girls who don't have a father at home, more likely to get pregnant before marriage, more likely to have a teen pregnancy, more likely to drop out of school. I think that speaks volumes. I know that the court system wants to go, well, mom is mom, and mom is more important than dad. But let's be honest, when dads aren't around, society breaks down. So you've got Kanye losing a say in his child's upbringing. She's 8 years old. Then you've got his child in a hypersexualized society singing wildly inappropriate lyrics on a TikTok video, which is a platform that is meant for depravity. And the Chinese Communist Party promotes depravity on that platform in the United States. They don't in their own country. They promote engineering and science in their own country when they're pushing new TikToks to you. In our country, they promote TNA. You have to look for the other stuff. And even if you look for the other stuff, they will push TNA to you. If you're looking at all military videos, you're watching everything about Ukraine, you're watching all of this stuff in the war, there will, at some point, randomly be a girl with a sexualized post that gets pushed into your stream. That is designed by the Chinese Communist Party. They don't do that in their own country, according to people who are in that country with TikTok. That's not what the content is promoted over there. But it is here. Isn't it interesting that the Communist Party wants that content promoted here, but not in their own country? So he's got an 8-year-old child. He's losing control over, say, in the raising and upbringing of his child. His child is, when they're with their mother, the child is singing wildly inappropriate lyrics, is dressing in a way that he doesn't approve of on a platform that hypersexualizes people in a society that hypersexualizes people and is hypersexualizing children, even in public education, certainly in entertainment, of which he knows more about than most of us. And he's trying to keep his children grounded with their faith, but he can't get it done. In the meantime, there's a new man in his soon-to-be, but still, wife's bed, soon-to-be ex-wife's bed, and that person is now around his kids. And we already know that that is psychologically damaging to children as well. So there's a lot going on here. And I know that a lot of people want to look at it and go, well, Kanye's he's going overboard. Yeah, I would agree with you. I think some of the stuff that he said and done has gone overboard. But he's also fighting for his kids, and he does have, again, diagnosed psychological disorders, and that might be an explanation for why he posts some of the stuff that he does and then deletes it. I'm sure that he's got his manager sitting there and going, dude, take that down. you can't post that. Or he comes to his senses, after he's going through these depressive and manic episodes. So at the end of the day, though, what is Kanye doing? He's exposing all of these things that fathers and sometimes mothers have been dealing with in our society through a separation when there's children involved. And he could be, I think he's 100% right about what's happening with his kid and TikTok and everything else. I'm 100% on Kanye's side there. And while this is an issue that gets completely ignored, and if any man tries to highlight this issue, they're immediately attacked by the organized feminists in this country, it's going to be very hard to do that to a person like Kanye West. He could be the best person to expose this issue in our society. And everybody knows what TikTok is. Is it really wrong for a man to not want his 8-year-old to sing sexually explicit lyrics on TikTok? Is that really something that's inappropriate? Is that something that we don't want to support that guy for? He's just trying to protect his children. And maybe he's going about it a little excessively in some of the ways that he is going about it, but he's still, at the end of the day, just trying to protect his 8-year-old from going on a platform that she doesn't belong on and singing lyrics that she doesn't need to be singing and dressing in ways that she shouldn't be dressing. And her mom got famous for one reason and one reason only, and it wasn't talent. Ladies and gentlemen, make sure you subscribe. Please hit that comment section after we're done with this, not the Rumble rants, not the live chat. Go into the comment section on Rumble, please. Just type something. Let me know what you thought of the episode. Let me know if you agree, you disagree, and we will have maybe like a word for you or something like that next week. I know that Steven Crowder kind of does that. Other people do that. It seems to work for them, and we'll do what we can to get people more active in the comment section, because that would be great. I love the Rumble rants, don't get me wrong, but the comments seem to be what helps the algorithm the most. So if you could do that for me before you leave, I'd appreciate it. If you're new here, please hit that subscribe button. We'll be back at 3 p.m. to do the full 3-hour radio show on 95.3 MNC. In the meantime, go to silverfoxart.com. Fantastic company to work with. Definitely check them out. And asdefense.com if you like stabby, poking, knife things. We'll see you next time. Have a great weekend.